Hey, it's Parm King, and I'm really excited to bring to you another guide to Curse of Strahd. And well, you're probably why I'm dressed all warmly like this. Got my snow cap on and this jacket, because this is a really cold module guide. This is the first of our expeditions to the Amber Temple guides. This is the Ascent to Tsolenka. And before you get to Tsolenka Pass, you got to ascend through the snowy mountains to get there. But before we get started, a huge shout out and thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. It's your support that allows me to make these detailed videos, timestamp them, the PDF guides, the token packs, the sound files, and the Foundry Adventure modules. Yes, that's right. Everything you see here, you can just click a button, install it into Foundry, and away you go. Now, if you support me at the Foundry Adventure level, your names are credits actually in the Adventure module. You can see all these people have supported me making this particular module. A huge shout out to all of you. Big thank you. Your names are in here. Now, if you support me at the PDF level in the PDF guide, your names are in there. We have a great Discord community, people on there sharing ideas, helping one another, sharing artwork, thoughts, even battle maps they've designed on their own. So we have a great Discord community. Come on over there and say hello. Now, a couple of other special thank yous. First of all, DM Andy. As you know, it's DM Andy that's making these gorgeous battle maps. We've been on this epic journey together making stuff for Curse of Strahd, and he's very gracious to allow us to include a WebP version of his maps and our Foundry modules. If you're playing at home on a tabletop, or if you're using another virtual tabletop system like Roll20 or Fantasy Grounds or Owlbear Rodeo, all of these maps that you see here are also available in grid format, night, day, weather effects in this condition, in snow conditions. You can head over to DM Andy's Patreon page, check out these gorgeous battle maps that he's making in there. We're going to show two of them today here. In addition, James RPG Art makes these gorgeous matte digital paintings. I really like them, and he's been very gracious to allow us to include them in our Foundry Adventure module as well as in our videos. These are WebP versions of them. However, if you want the high resolution or the animated ones, which I highly recommend, I'm a Patreon member of his animated ones are awesome. Head over to his Patreon site. There's a link in the description below. And last but not least, none of this would happen. None of this Foundry stuff would happen if it wasn't for Blair, the Scene Packer module. He makes all of this happen. He's also working with me on another project for Gothic 5e, a 5e rule set for Gothic Core. Really excited about that. We're going to bring that out also for Foundry, so I'm super excited about that. Head over to Blair and Scene Packer modules if you want to make your own adventures using Scene Packer. Now, with all that said, let's jump into this guide, the Ascent into Tsolenka. Now, what is this? Let's talk a little bit about it first before we jump into the battle maps, and talk about what my thoughts and process was in doing this particular guide. This is the first of a series of guides which I called kind of the expedition to the Amber Temple, and maybe it'd be a little helpful to talk about it from a map perspective here. So this is kind of a zoomed in area of a player map that you could give to your players, and I'm going to be talking about the area for this particular guide. Now, Tsolenka Pass is down here at the bottom. You can see this bridge here. It's way up in the mountains, and when you cross the bridge at Tsolenka, rules as written, you're eventually going to get to the Amber Temple way up there in the mountains. However, what about all of the way there? And that's what this is. Now, if you've been looking on Reddit or following some of the other fan content providers, a lot of them, including Dragnacarta, Mandy Mod, Lunchbreak Heroes, and many others, really have kind of stretched this out as well with some of their ideas and thoughts on making this more of kind of an expedition to the Amber Temple, rather than just getting to the gates, going across the bridge and getting the Amber Temple. It needs to be a difficult task. And not just encounters, we want to make the environment part of it. So let's talk about where this particular guide is. So we have Kresk up here, and we have Vallaki, and there's a road, the road that you know well, probably, that goes between these two villages. There's three major crossroads here. So there's the crossroad that takes you down here to the Argynvost, the Keep of Argynvost. There's also the crossroad right before you get to Raven River that takes you down to the Wizards of Wine. We just did that module. You would be going this way. Well, there's another one right here, and I call this the Ascent. This is a road that hasn't been used in centuries. There's no reason to go on it. There's no village at the end of this. I mean, the road between Kresk and Vallaki is well worn. There's always, Vistani on there, or somebody trading, the Wizards of Wine, merchants going back and forth. This particular road goes up into the mountains, and it's a dangerous one. Let's talk a little bit about it here. So the journey begins southeast of Kresk, like we said, right here, and there's an unmarked road, and it's kind of just, I can imagine this old, ruined road, no longer well kept. Probably in the low area, there's some grass, it's a little overgrown, a couple old ruts there. And if you look off in the distance, you can kind of see the snow-covered peaks of the Caucasus Mountains in the distance. And just seeing this, it kind of chill goes up your spine. It's like, this road goes up there, I got to go up this road. Now, this area, I would say this is really, you're getting into level 7 adventuring area. This expedition is, wouldn't start lower than level 7, because by the time you get up to Ember Temple, you're talking about a level 9 area. So this is a slow ascent. Now, the first part of this is we're going down this road, and we're kind of going into the lower foothills and rising up. And as this path rises up, the temperature's starting to drop. It's starting to get colder, and, well, you're going to be facing some physical conditions and some mental conditions that you're probably not prepared for compared to the rest of Barovia. Now, this series of guides to the expedition of the Amber Temple is designed to add some new elements, some weather elements, some various hazards. So as the party's adventuring, they're going to have to plan and prepare, and they're going to have to use their wits and creative decision process to get through some of these things, because they're not just going to be straightforward combat encounters. So let's talk about the first thing here, some equipment and some conditions that your players are going to face in this ascent to Tsolenka. The first thing they're going to need is some equipment. And one of those equipments is the wolf fur blanket. And let's talk a little bit about this wolf fur blanket. Now, you can pick this up, for the wolf hunters in Vallaki. You could get it at the Trap Paw. That's the store owned by the wolf hunters, the hunting store. You can get it from Strahd Leather and Goods in Vallaki. You can get it from the general store in Kresk. You can also get it probably from Darovich, the wolf hunter in Kresk. Maybe even Skinnis in his cabin would probably have this. And this wolf fur blanket is made for sleeping in the snow or extreme cold conditions. It's from the white wolf, which has, like the winter wolf, really thick fur. So it's really made for extreme cold conditions. If you wear this jacket or wear this, I'm holding my jacket. If you wear the wolf fur blanket during a short rest or a long rest, you don't have to roll for extreme cold temperatures and suffer or risk suffering any exhaustion. Now, a couple important notes about the wolf fur blanket. You cannot wear medium or heavy armor, any metal armor, and put this over you and expect for it to work. I mean, if you're laying there on the ground in cold armor in the tundra, frozen tundra, the wolf blanket needs to be over you, not over, a bunch of plate mail. So you got to take that armor off for that long rest for this wolf blanket to work. Now, the other benefit it has, if you're a player that's in freezing condition, we'll talk about that condition in a little bit. If you put this wolf blanket around them, this wolf fur blanket around them, it'll warm them up pretty quickly. They no longer have to roll those constitution saves to find out if hypothermia or if they get cold. The freezing condition ends. In addition, using this during a long rest will reduce one level of exhaustion. So this fur blanket is a must. It goes usually between 3 to 6 gold. You can pick it up at either in Kresk or in Vallaki or a wolf hunter. So that's the first thing you definitely need to bring with you. The second thing is the wolf fur cloak. This does the same thing as the blanket, but this is for when you're marching around, and even in combat, you don't have to roll for any of those extreme cold or snow conditions. However, the wolf fur cloak, so you tie it around, it goes over your armor. In combat, in melee combat or range combat, you're going to get -1 to your attack rolls, because this thing is kind of, encumbering, it's kind of hindering you from, your free movement. It's a little bit in the way. It's keeping you warm, but you got a little downside on those attack rolls. -1 to your melee attack rolls and your range attack rolls. Now, you could say, untie it, throw it to the ground, jump into combat, and you're not going to have that negative modifier. But at the end of combat, you're going to have to roll against extreme cold on a DC 10, and you go, well, what if I just put back on that wolf fur cloak? I'll be fine. Not really, because any of you watching this video, and there's some of you that have, I have myself, have lived in the deep snow conditions. And if you've done any physical exercise out there, whether it's cross-country skiing or shoveling snow, and you start sweating, and it's like sub-zero out there, you start sweating, as soon as you stop moving, as soon as your body heat drops, that sweat turns to ice. I mean, it turns to fucking cold. I mean, you're freezing. So the worst thing you can do is just sweat a lot while you're out there in the snow and then stop working out because you'll start freezing quickly. I can imagine you're in combat swinging your sword around, you're all sweating, you're not getting any negatives on modifiers on your attack rolls, and you're landing some good blows, but at the end of combat, you're like hyperventilating, you're starting to cool off, and all of a sudden, all that sweat turns really cold. If you're wearing metal armor on top of that, man, it is going to be so unpleasant. You have the risk of that hypothermia setting in. So you are going to roll. If you're not going to wear that wolf fur cloak, you are going to roll at the end of combat. You're going to roll it against that DC 10, against that cold condition, in case to see if you get a level of exhaustion on you. So the wolf cloak, it's a benefit, but in melee range combat, you got to think about, what do I want? The not getting the negative modifiers, or having to roll at the end of combat on that cold condition table. You can throw it on after that, but you still got to do it. All right, here we go. What else do you need here? You need some hemp rope, the climber's kit, a piton, and a hammer. These things are going to be quintessential, super important as you go on this adventure and this expedition up to the Amber Temple. Now let's talk about some conditions that you're going to face specifically in this guide. The first one we just were talking about is extreme cold. So if you're awake and you're hiking and you're in combat, every single hour that you're not wearing this, you're going to have to roll against a Constitution save DC 10. Every time you fail that, you suffer a level of exhaustion, one level of exhaustion. Every time you fail a level and you get a level of exhaustion, your DC goes up by 1. So if you fail the first one, your next DC check is going to be DC 11. Your next DC check, if you fail again, is going to be DC 12. This shows how you're getting more tired, you're getting more fatigued, the cold is really wearing on you, and it's getting harder and harder and harder to make those DC checks. Again, put on your wolf cloak, you're good to go, except for in combat, you got to think about what you want to do. Resting, player's going to need to roll 1 Constitution save for a short rest or 4 for a long rest. If you have the wolf blanket, you don't need it. But you got to remember, the wolf blanket, you got to take off that metal cold armor for it to work for that long rest. So there are some caveats here, and we want to put these in there to add not only some verisimilitude to these conditions, but it's not supposed to be easy. In a lot of these things, you have to make a choice. Do I want the negative modifier, or do I want to roll against a condition? And when you're in the freezing cold, sometimes you just got to pick the lesser of two evils. It's a Kobayashi Maru moment, if you will. Next thing we have is slippery ice. Now, anytime you're going to step onto a layer of ice, you're going to try to see if you get your sure footing or not, right? Is it really slippery? Is there a little snow on it? Is it a little frosty? So you're going to go on there and you're going to make a dexterity acrobatics check. It's a DC 10. If you fail, you're going to fall prone and you're going to suffer 1d4 worth of bludgeoning damage. Imagine if you've ever gone ice skating and you just fall on your rump and boom, you got a black and blue bum. Well, that's that 1d4 worth of bum damage that you're getting if you fail that check. You only have to make that once, because what you're doing is you're trying to see if you got a sure footing on that particular ice or not. Next up is thin ice condition, and there's 2 sets of rules because I'm using Monk's active tile triggers in this. I'm going to show you how this automatically works, which is really, really cool. Really excited about that. However, if I was playing at a tabletop, or if I wasn't going to use Monk's active tile trigger, or playing on maybe another virtual tabletop system, this is the rules that I would use. And this is a little bit more subjective. So I take the D20 die here, and based on the situation, I'm going to roll this as the game master to determine if the ice breaks. And you want to make this, this is subjective to you based on the situation. What I don't like, and I didn't want to put it hard and fast in here, is this: I move 10 feet, roll the dice, move 10 feet, roll the dice. It becomes very mechanical and boring. So the way this works is maybe a couple of the players have been congregating together on the ice for a few minutes talking, and you're going to go, hey, they're sitting on the ice. There's some body heat there. There's weight on the ice. I'm going to roll the die. And if it's a 1 or 2, the ice cracks, 1 or 2 of them falls in. If it's a 3, 4, or 5, which is about 15%, the ice begins to crack. You go, the ice is cracking beneath you. What do? What you're doing is you're giving them a moment to make a quick decision. If they're going to move quickly, maybe tie a rope to one another, grab their pickaxe or something, they're going to do something to get off that ice where it's cracking. Give them a moment. Let them make a decision, an action. Even if you want to put them in to have them roll initiative so they're making discrete actions with consequences, do that. That's the whole purpose of that. Ice begins to crack. If they don't do something or they hesitate, they're going to fall in. Now, you can easily change these percentages and how many times you roll. If you wanted only 5% that they fall in, you roll on a 1 on a D20. That's 5%. If you want to fall in on 10%, that's a 1 or a 2. So you can adjust these how you see fit. Maybe there's a player that's been carrying some extra weight with him, or he or she is overburdened with that weight, and you're going to go, hey, you know what? You're going to be maybe making that roll a few more off, maybe more often for that particular player versus a player that's a little bit light, or if they're all standing together, huddling together on the ice. So 1 or 2, they fall through the ice. 3, 4, or 5, ice is starting to crack. Make a decision what you're going to do. 6 or higher, nothing happens. And then roll this. I would say it's situational dependent. You don't want to slow down the narrative or interrupt the game. But if you see a moment where you think it would be appropriate to roll that dice to see if that ice breaks beneath them, go ahead and do it. Now, what happens when they do fall into the freezing cold water? Well, they're immediately going to suffer 2d6 worth of cold damage right away. And the next thing that's important is you're going to have everyone roll initiative. Now, you're saying, why roll initiative? There's no combat. Initiative is also great to use to measure discrete actions. There's a couple of things that we want to do it for this particular reasons. Number one, I always like to make sure that everybody gets a turn and gets to do something. And sometimes you're at a table and you get the one quiet player or the one player that is really taking most of the time and the one player that's not. By creating an initiative for an event encounter, a hazardous event or something like that, every player is getting to make a decision on their turn. That's the first thing. The second thing, for this particular condition, it's really important because the creature or the PC that falls into the water, they're only going to be able to last in that freezing cold water for the amount of turns equal to their Constitution ability score. So if you have a 12 ability score, you can only stay in that water for 12 turns. At the beginning of your turn, you're going to roll a Constitution save. Starts at a DC 10. If you fail, you're going to suffer 1 level of exhaustion. And guess what? Every time it's your turn, that DC increases. You're in that frigid water. It's getting colder and colder. Next time it's a DC 11, then a DC 12, and then a DC 14. And guess what? There's only going to be 3 outcomes in this scenario. When you follow that icy cold water, there's 3 outcomes. Unfortunately, 2 of them are death. First one is you fail 6 times, on that exhaustion table. And I think it's the 6th time you're dead. Or you only had, let's say, a Constitution of 12, and we're at, going into your 13th turn, and you're in the water. Well, hypothermia sets in. You start to drift down. Your muscles kind of atrophied and whatever. You start to freeze, and you just drift down into the deep darkness underneath the frozen lake. And, well, sorry about that. They're going to have to fish you out in the spring. Unfortunately, this place, there is no spring. Okay, so it's important that you're going to roll that, and you're going to have higher and higher levels of Constitution. So this is a great opportunity to allow the players to do some creative problem solving. They got some ropes. They got some pitons. How are they going to get their fellow player out of the water? If they get too close, you might want to roll that thin ice check. Oh, they're really getting close, so they might not be able to get super close. Maybe they got a staff. Really let the players run with this, and you as the DM decide when you want to roll those thin ice cracking tests. I would also say, in my opinion, is the player that's in the water that's freezing, if you go, okay, they're going to throw a rope to you, grab the rope. I wouldn't say, oh, you get to grab the rope. I'd say you got to roll a dexterity check to see if you can hang on, or a Constitution save, or some kind of save, dexterity save, some kind of check, a Constitution save, to see if you're strong enough to hang on to that rope. And the first time they do it, I would make it, maybe a DC 10. Well, the second time they do it, it's a little colder. You've been in the water a little longer. It's going to be a DC 11. Your hands, I mean, if you've ever been in freezing cold water, try to grab something with your bare hands. It's going to be really difficult to hang on. So the person in the water can be, or, better yet, I just thought of it. Have the person in the water, anything they do, just roll a disadvantage on it, right? You want to do the check, it's going to roll a disadvantage. The person in the water can't be super helpful getting out of the water. They're freezing. And if they're wearing armor and stuff and they're being weighed down, they're doing everything they can to stay afloat, grabbing the edge of that ice, which is freezing, trying to grab something. It's really going to be, the onus is going to be on your party to help figure out how to get you out. There's no right or wrong answer to this. And what you should do as a DM, figure out some checks that you want to run. Dexterity, strength checks are both good ones. Strength and dexterity saves, acrobatics, athletics. Figure some stuff out. Let the players creatively solve this problem. This is a really good way of role-playing a situation. Now, one of the things I like to do on these things as well is layer encounters on top of them. If that player falls into the water, makes a loud noise, maybe in 2 or 3 rounds players haven't really got their shit together, guess what? Some wolves show up. I mean, it's always great. I did a little video on layering encounters. Have a creature show up. Maybe some wolves hear some noise at the lake. What's going on out there, right? Or something else happens. So think about that. These are the conditions. Again, I'll just cover them really quickly. We've got extreme cold, slippery ice, thin ice, and freezing water. Now, as I mentioned before, when we look at this image, this area here that we're going up all the way to here is we're going to get up to this pass, right? And I mentioned that right here. You're going to get up. This is not Tsolenka Pass. This is the Bargau Pass. Now, Bargau Pass it's right here. Bargau Pass. This is an actual real location in Romania, and the Bargau Pass, just for a little reference, it was used as I believe, Bargau Pass in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it was really a pass through the mountains that kind of figuratively represented leaving the realm of safety and entering in the realm of Count Dracula. So I'm using this as kind of to pay homage to Bram Stoker's Dracula. So the Bargau Pass, that's this pass right up here in the mountains. You're going to get up into this pass. It's pretty high up. And then you're going to go head down. So from the crossroads here all the way to the top of the pass, which is this great James RPG art image here I would use, all the way to the top of the pass, right around here, you're coming up to the top. That's this little, just zoom in here a little quickly. Coming up here, this is going up to the top of the mountains, and you're going to go back down into this little valley right here. That's 1 day journey. And because it's a 1 day journey, I would recommend for that first day's journey is probably using one of the random encounters. Just come up with a random encounter, or I just made that random encounter module video guide and PDF. Pick out one out of theirs. There's even a Winter Road encounter in there, some with some hunters or something like that in there. So why is it going to take a day, even on the scale of map that you're using to get to the top of the pass, to the Bargau Pass is, well, you're going up altitude and air is getting thinner, so you're not walking as fast. You're getting into colder conditions. You've got snow, you've got wind, so you're slowing down. The party's getting tired. So when you get to the top of the pass, this might be a good theater of the mind map to camp up here. You're at the top of the pass and you're looking down. You can see down the pass, the old road, the old trail leads down to our first battle map location, the Frozen Lake. Really excited to show this one to you. So here we go, the Frozen Lake. We're going to activate this one here. This is a gorgeous map drawn by DM Andy. We got some great things on here to show you, including Monk's active tile trigger, a really good implementation, if I do say so myself, of his tile triggers. And Bailey Wiki, if you're watching, I think you're going to be proud of me because all this Monk active tile trigger stuff comes from Bailey Wiki. It's his idea, so I'm not trying to steal his thunder, but I am a little bit. I thought this was a good one. I think he'll like it. Maybe he'll give me a thumbs up on this video. All right, so let's talk about it here. So I'm going to read you a little bit here. Traveling through the snow-covered pass in the mountains, the road descends into a shallow valley. The temperature has dropped. The winds are howling. The coldness penetrates your bones. The road is barely visible as it emerges from the snow-covered forest and leads across the frozen lake. The frozen lake extends to the north and to the south, and some distance ending in these cliffs that rise hundreds of feet. The snow-covered road across the icy lake seems like the only way to get across. You notice some paw prints at the edge of the lake and heading out across the snow-covered road. So here you are. They've approached the players. I would put the players down here in the bottom of the map down here, and they're coming here, and you read this description to them. We've got the snow. I think you can hear the cold wind blowing. Let me just turn that up for you. I'm just role-playing. Okay. Getting, it's just wind is blowing, it's howling in your face, your nose, it feels like it's about to fall off. You're right at that ice-covered lake. You see some paw prints. Now, investigating the paw prints, I like to use scaling DC. So I'd do like DC 10 to 14. It's wolves. You're not too sure how many, but they've been here in the last day. DC 15 or higher, 3 large wolves. It's hours old. Perhaps maybe even DC 18 or 19 or DC 20, 3 winter wolves. They were just here an hour ago. So, the scaling DC allows you to be more accurate in your reading in there, and I always like to use those scaling DCs. So here you go, and we're going to talk about crossing the lake. I got a player icon. We're going to throw them down here, and I'm going to show you how this works on here. So if the players decide to cross the lake, and we got a player token right here, you're going to you see these boxes here? They're currently invisible, and I'll just show you. They're marked invisible, and there they are visible. And all these are Monk's active tile trigger tiles. So I'll show you how this works. I have the tiles set to a 10% chance of triggering. So we're going to trigger one of them. We're going to see what happens when it gets triggered, and then I'm going to walk you through it. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try to trigger one. Remember, it's randomly 10%. So we're going across the ice. Nothing. Everything looks good. This is awesome. Just keep on traveling across the ice. No problem. Maybe you got your skates on and you're ice skating on the ice. Oh, there we go. So what's going to happen is 3 messages are going to pop up. First one is the pop-up message that says, "Help, I've fallen in. It's freezing. You have suffered cold damage and are beginning to freeze. Roll a Constitution save." And then it automatically rolls here 2d6 worth of cold damage. What it does to the game, it's going to pause the game. It's going to mark your character. It's going to freeze your character. It's fallen -5 feet elevation, and you've got your frost marker on there. And you heard that little ice cracking sound. Let's actually take a look at the monk's tile to see what's actually happening. You see the tile is also revealed here. So I'm going to walk through all the triggers for this so you can see that. So when a creature enters it, I have it set to 10%. If you want to run it up at 60% or 100%, or down at 5%, whatever percentage, and you could switch them around. You could have some at 10, some at 15, 20, depending on where they are on the ice. That's going to randomly trigger there. First thing it's going to do is pause the game, stop the token movement, and snap that token to the grid. It's going to play that sound file you just heard, the cracking ice. It's going to show this tile. We just see it. There it is. So the players are now going to see the cracked in the ice and the water there. It's going to put the chat bubble up. "Hey, I've fallen in and it's freezing. Help." Then you have the elevation token. It's going to drop to -5 feet. Remember, you're falling down into the ice. So your head, you're down below the feet of the players in front of you. You're struggling to float there. It's going to add the frozen effect. We got that right here on your icon, on your token. It's going to roll a -2d6 worth of cold damage, and then you got the message to everybody, roll Constitution. At this moment, I'd have all my players roll initiative because the players are going to decide. Remember, we talked about how to get that player out of the freezing, icy, cold water. They've got to do that. Now, what's really fun about these tiles here is this is just a picture in here that I've added into the tile. And if we make this invisible again, I can just click on it, hit Control-C, and I can just start putting these all over. I can say, I want more of these things, and just put them all over the map. So you can put these anywhere you want to, and when a player hits one of those, they'll fall in. Let's have them hit another one, just so you can hear it. Listen closely. There you go. So he's fallen in. That's what happens. This is really cool. I think this is a great implementation, in my opinion, of Monk's active tile triggers. So what happens now, right? You're heading across this path here. Maybe the players want to go across the ice because they think, the path, maybe there's something, it's a trap or something. Maybe the wolves will get me. This is what's actually going to happen. The old hunter. So as you cross the lake, you're going to reveal this token over here, and they're going to hear this old hunter. He's in the water. Someone calling for help. Help! I've fallen in. Help! Get me out. Now, what you want to do at this point, and this is a timed event. Remember, when you have a time event, time doesn't necessarily putting on a timer. One of the things that I like to use as a timer is initiative. The initiative system is not just good for combat, it's good as a timing mechanism because you give each player like 1 or 2 minutes to make a decision and do an action, go to the next player, and one round obviously represents whatever you want it to be. You can say each round represents 1 minute if you want to, if you're using it not for combat encounter, but using it for maybe decision-making processes, and that's what we're doing here. When the players decide to go rescue him, you're going to ask the players, are you ready to go? Do you want to rescue this guy or not? And if they say yes, you're going to say roll initiative. They're going to go, why? Because rescuing this guy that's drowning, every person here is going to have to make a discrete decision that's going to possibly have a consequence, whether to rescue or not. Or maybe you're trying to help somebody else or offer aid to somebody else. Again, it doubles by giving everybody an opportunity to make their own decision and make their own turn. This really helps out when you get that, quiet player or you have that one dominating player. This really gives everybody an equal opportunity to share their ideas and their creative solutions, or maybe some special ability that their player character can have. Maybe there's a spell to help get them out of the water. Who knows? So what you're going to do is, if they decide they're going to roll initiative, you have 6 rounds to get the hunter out of the water. Now, the hunter's name is Bogda. He's in there. To rescue Bogda, you're going to have to figure it out. And again, this is the fun part. The players are going to have to come up with some creative solutions. And remember, you've got monks' active tile triggers. They might trigger an ice, another person might fall in. Now you're in real trouble. At the end of round 6, if he's still in the water, he's going to die. He's going to succumb to the cold water. Something else is happening, which you're going to find out to this guy, why he succumbs so quickly compared to one of your players who might be able to last a few more rounds. At the start of the second round, the players are going to spot some winter wolves. Here they are, right up here. And these winter wolves, it's going to be, you can either randomly do it as a 1d4 plus 1, or you can make it, and I would really make this depending on how many players are in your party. Whether it's 3, 4, 5, or 6. What level are they, right? Are they level 7, and you got 7 players? Throw in 6 wolves, throw in 7 wolves. If you got 3 players, they're level 6, make it 2 two winter wolves. So level it on the party. The second thing you want to do here when you put the winter wolves out here is maybe you have 2 on the north side of the lake, and then you have 1 or 2 on the south side of the lake. So I put a few in here. They're invisible. You just click them on. Now, they're going to see them at the beginning of the second round. And imagine this, and you want to describe them. These winter wolves come creeping out of the snow-covered forest. They're pacing up and down the snow-covered coastline. And what they're doing is they're, stalking and checking out the possible prey. They've heard some noise out on the ice. They see some figures out there. And just like normal wolves, they're evaluating the situation. Is it worth us going out on that? Does that look like good food? So they're kind of, sizing up the situation. You're going to add them to your combat order at the end of combat. So you give them all like a combat initiative of 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and let the players do whatever they want to during that second round. At the end of the second round, that's when the winter wolves make their move, is at the end of the round. So you're setting some tension here. Maybe the party's dividing up. You guys go, fend off the winter wolves. We got to get this guy out of the water here. He's screaming and asking for help. This is, again, what I call layering an encounter. You're trying to get somebody out of the water at the same time winter wolves are approaching. Now, I just want to show you something really cool about the winter wolves. I don't know if you watched my Foundry video on animating tokens. I did that with the winter wolves here. Let me just show you how this works. So, they blast that cold breath. I think they have 15 feet of cold breath. Well, I already got it preloaded with a light. All I have to do is turn on dim light for 15 feet, and their cold breath is just blasting out. Check it out. He's going down there. He's just freezing the head off of Bogda in the water. Sorry, I'm having a little fun. Okay, so I just did that in there for shits and giggles. You can just turn it on and off with the dim light on the token. So they have their cold breath on there. It can kind of freak out the player, add a little fun animation to it. If the players are able to get Bogda out of the water, all right, here he is. This is Bogda. I'll show you a picture of him. I got an image right here of him. There he is. There's Bogda. If you get Bogda out of the water, he's a hunter, and he is of what's known as the Ursari. I'll tell you about the Ursari in a second. Ursari is a Balkan Romani word that means either bear handler or bear leader, and that's what they call their peoples, Usaris. They're also known as the mountain folk. He lives in a village that's named after the pass, is Bargau. So the Bargau Pass, there's a village called Bargau Village. That's where he's from. Now, one of the things, when you pull him out of the water, the players are going to start noticing right away when they got to him, he looked like he maybe was 30 years old. He had brown hair, short brown beard, and mustache. By the time they get him out of the water, his hair and his beard is growing. He's starting to age before their eyes, and his beard and hair are starting to turn white. He is aging. He's aging in front of the players. And this is, and here's this first sound file for you folks, this is what he's going to say. So listen carefully. I'm going to put this in here for you. Turn on the, there we go, where he is. I went hunting, as I do most days. It was a heavy snow. A blizzard came. I must have wandered far off the trail, farther than I thought. Beyond the snow forest. Strayed too far. In the curse, yes. The curse take hold, as it does those of my village. If I don't get back, I will eventually die. Please help me back to the village. You will be welcomed. We will offer a warm place for you to stay. A warm meal. We have not had visitors for as long as I can remember. Well, that's what he says when you pull him on the water. Now, I have that written in script. If you want to read it, it's right here, or you can just play the video if you don't want to role play it yourself. When you also pull him out of the water, you'll notice that he's wearing this tusk necklace. This is the tusk necklace, and it has some 4 symbols on it. These symbols are actually Celtic symbols, and they read Lena. And if you ask him, he goes, this was a necklace made by my father to my mother. It is her name, Lena. Now, Bogda doesn't know how to read. He just knows that this language is written in Lena. Now, let's talk a little bit about the curse. By the way, this necklace is going to be important for the next scene because it's going to be a clue to help solve a puzzle we'll talk about shortly here. So the curse, Bogda's actually really in his 20s. And this curse happened to his village centuries ago. The villagers, the Usari, had joined with Argynvoss and the Knights of the Silver Dragon fighting against Strahd. And then they also worshipped the Mountain Fae. And so Strahd, in revenge, cast this curse on them and destroyed their village. Actually, it's ruins now, which is in the next guide. Ruins for them to live forever and to remember. Do not, they're his enemies. But just like Shangri-La or Brigadoon, they can't leave their village because if they leave the village and wander too far away, they will age rapidly and die. Now, I took this idea and concept. If you haven't seen or read the play Brigadoon, which is about a Scottish mythical place that comes every 100 years, kind of mixed the idea with Shangri-La, and that's from a book, a 1930s book called Lost Horizons, where the people would go there and your aging would slow down, just slow completely down. But if you left, you would rapidly age to your current age. So you remember the Great War with Strahd happened over 3 years ago. Everybody in this village is 300 years old, yet, Bogda was in a day over 20. He hadn't aged at all, and then he got lost. He wandered outside the realm of his village, fell into the ice, and he started aging. So that's why he's aging in front of the players. They got to get him back to his village. Otherwise, he's going to turn into an old man and eventually bones, and eventually into dust. He's over 300 years old. So this adds another timing element. And you're going to see in this series, in this guide here, this particular guide, time is a critical a factor, and it's one of the big clues here. So this is really cool. I really, really like this storyline. I like Bogda a lot. He's a really cool guy. By the way, that sound file is also available to the PDF members. So if you want to use this in your tabletop and listen to Bogda, tell him about how he's freezing and needs to get back to his village before he dies. So this is the map here. We've got the tiles on here with Monk's active tile triggers, Bogda, the winter wolves and everything. It's really cool. And that leads us to our next map, which is the Snow Forest. Now what happens in the Snow Forest, excuse me, in the Snow Forest, you're going to read here is on the other side of the frozen lake, the path leads back into the snow-covered forest. The deep snow has slowed travel and it's getting colder and colder. Ahead of you, notice a small clearing and a large stone boulder with a small obelisk on top. The following symbol has been carved into the stone boulder, and here's the symbol right here. You're going to recognize right away the symbols look like the symbols on Bogda's necklace. And we'll take a look at Bogda's necklace again so you can compare those symbols. And you already know what Bogda's necklace says. It says Lena, right? So you're going to want to know how to translate it. If the player is going to try to translate it, you're going to run investigation check, DC 15, and you're going to get a limited translation. The first word at the top here is the name of a people or village. Is all you can make out. You're not too sure. You don't know what the second word is. The third word is actually 2 letters. It's the word to, T-O, and you don't know what the last word is. So let's take a look at this again and just decipher it together here, because it's pretty easy to decipher. If we know the necklace says Lena, and we know the third word is to, well, we can look through and see, are there any other T's, which is this symbol here. Well, there's a T right here, so this is blank, 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 T, T-O, and then T, blank, 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 right? The second thing we know is O. This here is an O. Is there any other O's in here? And there is only one other one right here. So it's blank O blank T, T-O, and then T blank blank. If we look over at Lena, we know the first one is an L. Is there any L's? Yes, there's one here. L-O blank T. There's only one L. Next one is E. Are there any E's? And we see one E, which is T blank blank E. Third one is N. There doesn't appear to be any N's. And the last one is A. So there's blank A, blank, blank, A, blank. So we know this is blank, L-O blank T. That's lost, by the way, lost to, and T blank, blank, E, lost to time. And the actual translation is the village, Bargau, or however you want to pronounce it, lost to time. Time is the theme in the riddle. And this is important because if they translate this, it's going to help them understand the riddle. And so what happens next? Oh, by the way, when Bogda's there and he sees this, maybe you saved Bogda and you've seen this. If Bogda is with you, he's going to say, yes, this is the stone marker that marks the edge of the Asari territory, in our village, Bargau, just lies to the north. Now, his people aren't supposed to go south of this marker. If they do, the curse sets in, and those who go beyond the marker, the rock with the obelisk on it, die, right? Just like Bogda is. He's slowly aging very quickly. If he asks about the writing, he can't read. He just believes the first word up there. He thinks it might be a name of his village or his people, just like if you pass that DC check. The note on Bogda's necklace, the letter on Bogda's necklace, Lena, will also help you, as we just saw, deciphers this. So what happens next? As you can see, I got some invisible tokens. We're going to be using Monk's active trigger again in here. When the players travel just north or just up to the edge of this rock and they look like they're going to go north, you're going to do this here. So we're going to click on this and we're going to zoom in.
Halt. In the name of the Order of the Silver Dragon, answer thy riddle, and you may pass. This thing all things devours, birds, beast, trees, and flowers. Gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays kings, ruins towns, and beats mountains down.
So what we have here is, as soon as the players move north past the stone marker in the obelisk, a shield maiden appears like a ghostly figure on the top of the rock, and she says this riddle. You just heard it, it's recorded, but you could read it if you want to role play it here if you want. The whole area begins to light up a little bit, and she's up there and she asks you this riddle. Now, when Bogda sees this, if he's with you, he sees this, he'll fall to his knees and he'll begin to cry, because he'll remember this as a woman from his village. He doesn't know how to answer the riddle. He didn't even know that they were here. No one's ventured, certainly not him, and no one that's ever managed to come back past this rock. So for her to appear is just a shock to him. Now, the riddle itself is a timed riddle, and the answer to the riddle, by the way, is time. Name this thing, all things devours. Time. Birds, beasts, trees, and flowers. It's time. Gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays kings, ruins towns, and beats the mountains down. It's time. The answer is time, and time is the theme in there. Remember when we deciphered the stone in the stone forest, it's Bargau is lost to time. Time is this constant theme going on in here. The people of the village are lost to time. And that was the warning that's carved in the rock, is the town is lost to time. Perhaps one of the villagers carved it in there in some kind of a warning to people coming there. It's lost to time, don't go, in some way like that. Now, the riddle itself is timed. When she asks the riddle, you want to put the shield maiden and all the players, again, tell them to roll initiative. Every single player is going to get a turn, and each player can only answer once. Give each player 1 minute. They can confer among themselves, talk as all they want, do whatever they like, and then at the end of 1 minute, the shield maiden goes, "Tell me your answer." And if the player is unable to answer or answers incorrectly, they lose their opportunity. It goes to the next player. If one player answers it correctly, the shield maiden will cast the shield maiden aid upon the party, and that is a spell that she has. It's a cantrip that she has that casts 2d10 plus her charisma modifier temporary hit points on a creature. So she's going to cast this on each one of the party members. They'll each receive 2d10 plus charisma modifiers, and she'll cast it on each one, and she'll disappear and allow the party to move on. If the party, none of the members of the party are able to answer the riddle, right, she calls upon her other snow maidens, shield maidens, right here, and they all appear. And there's something important to understand about the shield maidens. They are not aggressors. They're going to ask the party to stand down, to retreat or surrender. Now, if the party retreats, they head back south, the shield maidens will disappear. If they try to go back north again, they'll appear again, but you only get one shot at answering that riddle. Maybe you could decide to run some kind of reset, maybe a day later or whatever. Totally up to you. However, they're going to ask the party to surrender. If the party surrenders and surrenders their weapon, the shield maidens will escort them to the ruins of Bargau, which is the next module. They will defend. They will not let the party go north. They will attack and defend vigorously. Now let's talk a little bit about their combat technique. They have a special weapon. It's the Shield Maiden Longsword. It does 1d4 slashing plus 1d6 lightning damage. It is a bad boy for sure. You don't want to get hit with this thing. They only get one action. They could use life drain, and the only time, which is sort of like the Spectre, the only time they're going to use life drain is if a player is injured or gone prone. They realize that life drain won't always work. I mean, there's a Constitution save. So what they're going to do is they're going to use this because they have to get close to you to touch you to life drain you. These are shield maidens. They're fighters first, so they're going to use that long sword first. But if a player falls prone, they're going to go over to that player and try to life drain that player. Remember, they don't want to kill the players. They want to capture them if they can, and then march them into the old ruins Bargau. Now, the other thing they have is that spell. So if they see one of their fellow sister shield maidens start to fall, they might cast as their action the cantrip and give their shield maiden 2d10 plus charisma modifier and temporary hit points. They will aid one another in combat. So they're pretty fierce, but again, they're not aggressors. They're not going to they won't follow past this rock south. So if the players back off south of the rock, they'll just stand their guard. But if you start going north of the rock, they're going to bring it to bear. They've got a couple special features here. They are resistance to magic. That means they roll advantage on any saving throw against spells. Their weapons are considered magical. They have shielded mind. So if you try to read their emotion, read their thoughts, or scry them, you can't. They have incorporeal movement. They have a shield, as well as the chain shirt of the Maiden. That's their armor, so they have an armor class of 17, 25 hit points. Now, who are these shield maidens, you might be asking? The shield maidens are ghosts of their former self. They were here 300 years ago. The shield maidens were the female warriors who guarded the Tsolenka gates. They were also the protectorates of the old village, which is now ruins, of Bargau. Now, they are the female warriors of the village, and they served the Order of the Silver Dragon, and they were huge allies with Argynvost during the Great War. Now, the Shield Maidens defended, as I mentioned, Tsolenka Pass as well as their village, and even though the men fought in many battles, it were the women, the Shield Maidens, who are legendary in their defense. I mean, they defended the gates of Tsolenka. At the gates of Tsolenka, the Shield Maidens defended that against Strahd's armies for a long time. They held out and became legendary throughout Barovia as the most fiercest defenders. Again, they're not aggressors, but man, they will hold those gates against pressing forces, and they did. And that was one of the reasons that Strahd cursed the village. His armies couldn't defeat him. So if he cursed the village, if the Shield Maidens now had left the village to go up to Tsolenka Gate, they start getting old. So it was part of that curse, is to curse them, the village, destroy their village, for them to live in eternity, to be a reminder of being enemies of Strahd. Bogda will be able to tell the players a little bit of what I've told you, so he can tell them that these are the famous Shield Maidens, the Asari female warrior shield maidens from the Tsolenka Gate. Now, one of the things that's really cool about including Bogda in here, when he starts falling to the ground and he's freaking out, if the shield maidens do start attacking, he will plead with them. He goes, "I'm Bogda, don't you remember me?" The shield maidens won't recognize him. Remember, they recognize him at 20. He's now 60, right? He's starting to age. By the way, when Bogda gets north of this stone monument, this obelisk, his aging will stop. So he'll be fine. So he'll be back in his territory north of this rock. If he identifies himself, the shield maidens will not attack him. Now, there's some really interesting role-playing opportunities here. What if one of the shield maidens is Bogda's sister, or his lover, or perhaps one of them is even Lena, his mother? So this gives you some ideas to do some cool role-playing with the shield maidens, their history. You got this really interesting character, Bogda. The shield maidens are ghosts. They are continuing to do what they did in life, now in death. And just like the bodies of the living people, the dead spirits are trapped here, not only from the mists, but they're trapped here as well, doing what they did for 300 or 400 years ago, Well, that's it for part 1 of the expedition to the Amber Temple, heading up towards Tsolenka Pass. I'm really excited about this, really excited about how this will lead into part 2. I really, really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you smash that like button, hit subscribe, and the bell icon so you can be alerted to the next Curse of Strahd guide. This is Parm King. Until next time, may all your rolls be super critically successful against those evil minions in Barovia.